Here's useful information about every single League of Legends champion, all 158 of them. Guys, this video took me weeks to make, easily my longest one yet, so if you could take a second to poke that sub button and help me make a huge step towards 200k subs, I would be so thankful. Alright, let's get into it. Did you know if Aatrox has vision of you, he'll actually pull out his sword, which is really helpful if you're on the other team and not sure if the bush is warded or not. A lot of people don't know this, but after Ahri hits 9 stacks, her next spell will actually heal her, so after you hit 9 stacks in lane, you can use the Raptor Cam to heal up a bit if there are no minions around. Did you know that you can teleport while actively using your E to chase an opponent? Say you hit your E on an opponent teleporting away, but you quickly regret your decision. Well, it's not too late because you can teleport away during your E and you'll be good to go. Did you know when Akshan is invisible with his W, you can still flash without him coming out of his camouflage? You can actually even use teleport and it still won't reveal him. However, what will break the camouflage is recalling. If you ever find yourself playing Alistar and there's an enemy next to a wall, instead of using your traditional WQ combo, just use W and hold your Q for just an extra second. That way you can get a CC chain going since the W will stun them into the wall anyways. It also gives you more time for your E to go off, potentially giving you an even longer CC chain. If you really need some extra damage and have a lot of health, you can actually use turrets and their damage to get a faster cooldown on your E. Standing under a turret refreshes your E pretty dang fast. Did you know that enemies can't see Anivia's ultimate when it's in a bush? So if you ever find someone lurking just outside a bush, or if you see them about to face check, drop an ultimate and they probably won't even realize they're taking damage until it's too late. This is the enemy team's perspective for reference. It just looks like you're randomly taking damage. You can actually control Tibbers in a few different ways. The first is by holding down Alt and then clicking regularly. And the second is just by clicking your R button while moving your mouse around, which in my opinion is way easier. Surprisingly enough, Aphelios has the highest chance of winning when he has a Shyvana jungle on the team with him. I suppose there's a little bit of synergy in there, but it is a little random. This is probably the standard way people check objectives with Ashe's Hawkshot. But if you do that, you can scare them off, or at the very least alert them that you now have vision on them. Instead, try Hawkshotting just under the pit so you can see if the dragon is active, but the other team won't know that you can see. It also makes it really easy to follow up with an Ashe arrow. Aurelion Sol starts spin the fastest right after it gets out of his E, and then you use W. Unfortunately, it takes 2 seconds to get out of his E. However, if you E flash, it will cancel his E, but still allow you to W after and gain those quick rotating stars. So if you put it all together and are looking to get as much damage as possible in a pinch, you can use your E, flash, and then W instantly to get some fast spinny stars. When playing Azir, you should never use Q and then E to dash. Instead, E and then Q. That way, not only do you get more range, but you also have more control on where you dash. A lot of people know the popular magical journey spots like right outside of the fountain, but there are also some less common ones, like the inhibitor turret one, for example, or from your turret to the alcove. This one's a little tricky though. You have to click here and then right behind this torch. Every so often, try using Control 4 instead of your Q to fake people out and make them think you're going to use your hook. The start of both animations are surprisingly similar, and you may even be able to get a flash out of it. When a lot of people play Brand, they try and get their opponent to be a blaze first before hitting their Q, which ultimately makes sense for it on paper since you need the burn for it to stun. But you can actually Q and then E right before the Q hits for an instant stun, something I bet they won't see coming. Everyone knows that you can use Braum's W on allies for some extra MR and armor, but did you know you can actually use it on yourself too? If no one is nearby, you can just cast W straight on top of you and gain that extra buff for yourself, and it could save you in a pinch. Some of the best places to drop your Yordle snap traps are behind turrets so you can't see them. Another great place to throw them down are right behind walls, but this does only apply to a few pieces of terrain. Did you know that Camille's E can actually tell you if there are any enemies nearby without any vision? Whenever you use the first part of your E, there are little markers that come up if any enemies are nearby. It tells you exactly where to aim your stun to, even if you can't see them. Did you know that Cass's E isn't just empowered with her own poison, but is actually empowered from anyone's poison, which means champions like Singed, Teemo, or even Twitch all have pretty good synergy with her. The item with the highest win rate on Cho'Gath is Thornmail, which makes sense, but what is a bit surprising is the boots with the highest win rate on Cho'Gath are boots of swiftness. When you use Corki's package, always try and use it when enemies are near walls. That way it'll force them to stay on the package after it pushes them off. Of course, something else to keep in mind is if the walls they're next to is thin enough, it'll actually push the enemies over the wall, which can either be good or bad depending on the situation. Darius has one of the best level 1s in the game when he takes W, and especially when he has Ignite. So if your enemy top laner has to leash for the jungler, try sitting in the tri-bush and waiting for them to walk through. This also works on the other side as well by sitting in the other bush. If you're in low elo, which is most of us, this will work way more often than you think. At the very least, it will probably force them to have to back or screw up their whole laning phase entirely. Diana usually only has 2 dashes if she lands her Q, but if you E fast enough after casting Q, you'll actually squeeze in 3 dashes. Right after your Q is cast, you have to cast your E. And even if you land before the Q hits, you'll still get the reset. And then you'll be able to cast E 2 more times after that. Mundo surprisingly has one of the fastest jungle clears in the game and can even complete a full clear in 3 minutes and 15 seconds without a leash. Just go red, Krugs, chicken, wolves, blue, and then go grop. If you want to guarantee that you'll hit at least the first part of your ultimate on Draven, try casting it immediately after casting your E. Even though it looks like it may not hit, it still will since the enemy is knocked airborne for a split second. Similarly, if you want to try and land the ult coming back, you can flash to redirect the ultimate so it does hit. You can use Ekko's E to hide the animation of casting his W. It has to be timed right, but it can really help with catching your opponent off guard. Additionally, if you really want to get fancy, you can even flash your masteries to help mask the sound of your W, and that's no joke. For once, flashing your masteries could actually give you a real advantage. Did you know that Elise's W or Bomb Spider will jump on whoever you jump on? It is, however, able to be blocked in the process, so if you try to pull this off, make sure there's a clear path. Here's something I didn't even figure out until just recently, and that's if you look really closely, Eve's W will actually tell you where she is. After her W is full, it has an arrow that points to the direction that she's in. This could easily save your life and help you determine what side she's coming from so you can adjust accordingly. If you've ever had trouble aiming skill shots on Ezreal, this one may be for you. There's a little trick where if you use your Q right after you use his E, then his Q will auto aim to the target. As you can see, I'm not moving my mouse, but the Qs are hitting right after my E's hit. It can even work for your ult too. Unlike Wars, Fiddlesticks' effigies can actually be hit by blast cones, so you can use this to your advantage and gain vision in places you normally couldn't reach, like here. Fun fact, Fiora's vitals aren't actually random. They'll always spawn on the opposite side they're currently on, and these are the sides. The top and right side is one side and the bottom and left side is another. In other words, if the vitals spawn on the top or right side, then the next vital must be on the bottom or left side. Use this to your advantage by walking in that direction right after you hit. For some reason, Fizz can still move a little right after he Qs and Zonias. It's not a lot, but you can almost turn completely around. I guess the main way I could see this being useful is if you realized you went a little too deep and wanted to get an early start on turning around. Nevertheless, it's kind of a weird mechanic. A lot of people only use Galio's E forward to try and knock him up, which is fine, but they also don't realize that you can use your E backwards to get the same effect. While E'ing forward gives you more range, E'ing backwards goes off much faster and is almost easier to hit if you're close enough. The next time you get Lee Sin ulted as Gangplank, you may want to still consider using your W. While the W won't actually remove you from being airborne, it will prevent the rest of your team from being knocked up. If you're really precise, Garen can actually use his Q to hop over small walls, and this can be really handy when fighting people like York, for example, because he can just hop right out of his cage. And speaking of Garen's Qs, you can actually Q and then flash away, and the Q will still hit as long as the animation went through. If you find an enemy that's just out of your reach for your Q, or you just don't want to scare them off, try throwing your Q backwards instead of forwards. As long as you don't catch it, your Q will actually go further than it would if you just cast it normally. It can make for some pretty sneaky plays that you normally wouldn't be able to pull off. For some reason, when you're playing Gragas, using your W on a turret stacks your tiers, so if you're looking to get some quick tier stacks, just smack the turret around a little and you'll be good to go. Auto attack ultimate is a pretty common combination on Graves, but did you know you can even weave an E after the ultimate to get an auto reset and get a really quick combo off? You can deal a lot of damage really quickly with this method. Gwen can actually prevent herself from getting hit by the blast cone with her W as long as the enemy is the one who hits the cone. If her or an ally does it, she'll still be knocked up. When playing Hecarim, a lot of people forget that it's actually Hecarim's hitbox or this circle that fears the enemy, not the actual horses charging. In other words, if you don't hit this circle, you're not going to fear them, even if the horses still hit. This also means that you can get the fear off earlier if you are and then flash the hitbox onto the enemy. Pretty useful if you want to get a really fast engage and give them as little amount of time to respond as possible. If you look really carefully, you can actually see little metal nuts around Heimerdinger, which represent how many turrets he has available. So after I level up my Q, you can see 3 of them circling around me. This is more important for the person facing Heimerdinger because you can now see if he has turrets available. Did you know if you E-flash on Alawi, her tentacle will automatically target the place where your mouse was originally hovered? In other words, if you aim at an enemy and then E-flash, you don't even have to worry about lining up the skill shot because it'll hit pretty much every time. It's a great way to almost guarantee you hit your E. A great tip when playing Aurelia is to hide your first E animation when you're dashing with your Q. This makes it almost impossible to see it coming if you do it right. Just EQ onto a minion that's about to die so you get the Q reset and then just use your second E to get the stun off. Did you know that Ivern can do Rift Herald from behind the pit? Just position Daisy on the outside so the Rift targets it and you can auto the eye when it pops. Also, you can Q right over before the Rift dies so you don't even have to walk all the way around. When playing Janna on the blue side of the map, you can almost completely hide your Q behind the bottom turret, which can make for some very surprising plays. Also, a surprising amount of people don't know you can use your E to shield turrets. Whenever you're CC'd as Jarvan, try dropping your E and then Qing, because even if you're hit, you'll still be able to Q away. Just like what happened here when Baron knocked me airborne. Jax can actually recast his E mid-air, which means if it's done right, you can almost give them no time to react to the stun. Did you know that Jace can cancel his Q flip animation by hitting an emote like laugh, dance, or even taunt? If you hit Q and immediately do one of those right after, it will cancel the flip entirely, but it will still get the damage off. Did you know that Jhin can hold onto his 4th shot by casting any of his other abilities? You can throw down traps, use his W, or even Q, and each one of those will reset the cooldown for the time until he reloads. This little trick becomes critical on Jhin in the late game. No pun intended. Jinx's E is a really underrated tool for getting vision. While there's a limited range on how far you can throw them, they can actually go further than you'd think if you throw them on top of walls. Additionally, if you throw them in the right places, you can split up the traps to get vision in multiple places at once. A pretty neat trick. If you're trying to be really sneaky, you can use Kai'Sa's joke animation to mask which direction you're shooting your W. Kai'Sa's joke animation always turns her in the same direction, so if you W and then use the joke animation, it faces her down even if you're firing in a completely different direction. A lot of people forget that you can transfer your stacks to somebody else by last hitting with your Q, so try and stack it up on cannon minions because they have the most health, and then you can get a good chunk of damage off. People tend to hide behind minions anyway, so it can be pretty easy to hit sometimes. Karma has a massive loss rate against Sona. Like, it's kind of disgusting how often Sona players beat Karma, so if you can avoid it, try not to pick a Karma into a Sona. Always remember to use your W if you can before using your ult or any abilities in your passive. A lot of people forget it doesn't just slow people, but it also reduces magic resistance for 5 seconds, which can be crucial in getting an extra kill. When going back to lane, always use your R over the Nexus to get there faster. In fact, speaking of jumping over things, you can jump over some pretty big terrain. The indicator is pretty small, but it's fairly deceptive. Did you know you can get a little extra range with your E if you just click on the edge of the dagger? This extra range is actually enough that you can even hop over some small walls with it, which can be super handy for just about anything, honestly. You can even use plants to get over the wall in the same way. So Kayle has a 5-stack passive that gives her attack speed, but did you know that her passive timer can actually be reset by casting her ultimate? So if you're trying to hold on to that attack speed a little bit longer, you could use your R to give yourself a little more time. When Kane's in his blue form and uses his E, there'll be a little orb on the outside of the wall that will tell you where the nearest enemy is. It will even tell you about enemies you can't see, like the ones in bushes. Even though he's considered a top laner, Kennen has a much higher win rate in the mid lane. Did you know it's possible to double jump mid-air with Kha'Zix? One of the ways you can do this is by killing someone with your W while jumping, so your E resets while you're still mid-air. This also works by just autoing them or queuing them, but the timing has to be really good to get it to work. A lot of people think Kindred's marks are entirely random, but they're not as random as you think. At 0 stacks, it will always spawn on one of the Scuttle Crabs. At 1 to 3 stacks, it will spawn on the Scuttle, Raptors, or Gromp. 4 to 7 stacks, it'll spawn on either the Buffs, the Wolves, or the Krugs. At 8 stacks plus, it'll spawn on epic monsters like Rift, Baron, or Dragon. Instead of instantly leveling up your W, sometimes it's better to wait until they all in you, or you need a hard trade. That way you can control when your W will be up, and this way you can also guarantee when you'll have your W up for the fight. If you're really bold, this can even work once you've dismounted for a really quick remount. Kog'Maw has the highest win rate with a Lulu support, and it can give him around a 4% win rate boost. If you're having trouble landing your chain, try hiding the animation through your dash. Just E and then W, and it's really hard to see it coming as well as dodge it. When you cast a normal Q and then Q again, you won't be able to cast your E until after you reach the target. But if you ward hop cancel on your way to the Q, you can actually E mid-air and get the damage off even faster than you normally would be able to. Leona's E flash range is actually pretty huge. I mean, it's literally almost out of vision range. Nevertheless, just know how far you can really pull this off, and remember to E flash instead of flash E. If you position yourself in the fountain like this, you can actually use your E to pull all the way down the top and bottom lanes. All you have to do is click in the top of both of the bushes and you'll be good to go. However, it's not always advised to do this since it could actually break a freeze for your laner. Nevertheless, it's a pretty cool trick, and who knows, maybe you can ult somebody from the fountain one day. One of the most annoying things on Lissandra can be getting into a fight but misclicking on who you're trying to ult. A lot of the time you want to ult yourself but end up ulting the enemy instead. There is, however, a really easy way to fix this, and that's by clicking on your profile HUD picture. And if you play Lissandra in a lot, you can even change it in the settings so you can self-ult yourself by just hitting a key, and then basically you get a free Zonias. Always try and W before you use your ultimate on Lucian so you can get the extra movement speed when you're ulting. You are way slower if you just hit ult by itself and are way more mobile with your W. When there's a big team fight and everyone's next to each other, it can be almost impossible to click on your teammate to give them a shield. So a solution to this, instead of just clicking on them, is to use your F keys to find the champion you want and then use your shield. You can also click on their icons right above the minimap. Lux is great for stealing objectives. A lot of people just rely on their ult, which is fine for long distances, but if you can get close enough, stacking your EQ and ult together can usually do more than the jungler's smite. If you use Malphite's R on the middle of the wall or just a little bit past, Malphite will do an insanely fast ultimate. This works on pretty much any wall and is obviously a great engage, but can also be just a great tool for getting away. At the moment, for Malzahar, Ignite, and Flash are the highest win rate spells, which is really interesting since most people take Teleport. If there's only one target in front of you, instead of ulting straight forward, try ulting sideways. Ulting straight forward takes way longer to reach them and can give them plenty of time to react, but if you ult sideways, the root will spawn on top of them, giving them almost no time to react. Then you can easily follow up with the W. Most people use Master Yi's W for just its healing, but it can also be used to speed up auto attack. If you auto attack W and then auto attack, you can get them off much faster and then just attack normally. You can use Misfortune's passive mark to tell if someone used a decoy or not, like Wukong. If the passive mark disappears, then you know he used his W. Like Darius, you can also Q flash on Mord for some extra range and unexpected damage. Additionally, you can also Q and flash in any direction and the Q will still hit hit as long as it was initially cast in that direction. It's pretty much an auto-aim Q at that point. A lot of people forget about Morgana's passive that allows her to heal off large minions like cannon minions, for instance. In lane, Morgana can get a decent amount of health back by Qing or even Wing the cannon minion. Most people know that Nami's E can speed people up, but so can her bubble, which is why it's not actually really troll if you start throwing bubbles at your allies. Or maybe it is. Additionally, she can also bubble herself for movement speed. Nami also wants to remind you to sub if you haven't already, because a lot of you watching haven't subbed and it just takes a second. Thanks guys, and puppy. Nasus has the highest win rate when a Kayn jungler is on the team with him. It's actually possible to flash during Nautilus's Q animation. If you use Q and then use Predator right after, the game will allow you to flash right after casting Q. This is huge because usually you have to wait till the Q animation is over to flash, but since you can flash mid Q animation, you can do things like this where you can hook a wall, flash over a wall, and then pull yourself back over, since Nautilus always pulls himself towards terrain. While you're over the wall, you can still cast abilities too, like E or even All. Again, very situational, but kind of a cool trick. Did you know when it comes to Neeko's passive, you can actually hotkey it in the settings instead of clicking on it? You can actually bind it to a key. You can actually get a triple reset cooldown on Nidalee's W if you spear and then drop a trap right after. Then you just do your W and combo, and then you'll be able to jump 3 times total very quickly. If you're ever playing against someone who has a spell shield as Nocturne, well, congratulations, because now you have an automatic get rid of a spell shield button. If you know you're about to team fight and just really need that spell shield gone, you can just hit R and they'll lose it instantly. They'll still be able to see everything, but it can definitely be worth it. When playing Nunu, you almost always want to try and release your snowball before it hits because it prevents you from going into a small animation. If you release your snowball or W right before impact, you can also immediately cast other abilities like your E or even change direction to dodge something like Fiora's W. Most people take plated steel caps or Merc treads on Olaf, but he actually has the highest win rate with Ionian boots. People tend to hug their turrets when they're low, so one thing you can do as Orianna is throw your Q into their turret where they can't see it, and then when they're not expecting it, you can hit them with an ult. Maybe even a W as well. Did you know that Ornn can destroy pretty much any champion created terrain, like Anivia's wall for instance? This also works for things like Jarvan's ult or Talia's wall. Try to use your W on Pantheon when you have all 5 stacks with your passive because it'll reset it the quickest. All you need to do is Q and auto attack and you're good to go. Poppy will always ult her opponent towards the Nexus, which means she's great at diving people from behind them. If she can get an ult off, she can knock them away from their turret and immediately into a wall for a kill. Pyke's ultimate itself cannot go over walls. However, if there's an enemy nearby, you can get over some surprisingly large walls as long as you place it right. It can make for some great escapes or sneaky plays. If the Ocean Drake map is active, you can actually use the water puddles that spawn around the jungle camps as a water source for Qiyana's W. This can be super helpful to get a stun when you're not near the river. If you're trying to escape as Quinn, bait the enemy to getting near a wall so you can jump over it with your E. When playing Rakan, if you do it really fast, you can W and flash away before the knockup goes off for an easy get in and get out play. It's honestly sometimes best to just smash flash after W to make sure it goes off. If you ever use a speed build on Rammus, which I hope is all of you, you have to use Predator first or it will cancel your Q. Try using Predator Ghost and then whatever items you want like Turbo Chem Tank or Ghost Blade. I personally recommend all of them for max speed. Did you know you can actually hop over some walls to get into your tunnel? This is specifically useful when you need that extra bit of range to get from one point to another. If I were to make a tunnel on the other side of this wall, it wouldn't reach the chicken camp, but since it's on the opposite side, it's still able to reach, and I can go from this wall to the chicken camp with one tunnel. A lot of people think you can only get over walls with Rel's dismount W, but you can actually get over some small walls with her remount W if the target is close enough to the other side. Renata's ultimate is probably one of the easiest things to dodge since it's so slow, so try making things a bit more difficult for your opponent by using Q right before your ult, and that way you can ult in any direction without giving it away. You can be facing one direction and ult on the opposite side. Pretty handy. Did you know Renekton can get Fury from picking up honey fruit? Well, now you do. If Rengar teleports from a bush, he will still get his jump once he arrives. So if you see the Rengar on the other team teleporting, it may be a good idea to back up. Riven's third Q does a little knockback that if you hit it right, it can actually be a great tool to knocking them into your turret. If you Q right behind them, it'll sometimes push them into range. Keep in mind you cannot use Rumble's ult when overheated, so if you're about to go into a fight and spam abilities, make sure you use your ultimate first. Did you know that Ryze can cancel his ultimate by just hitting recall? This is a great way to outplay your opponent, making them think you're going to teleport because the recall animation is really hard to see in the blue on blue. It's way better than dancing in and out of your ultimate. The fastest combo to get an S rank on Samira is by going auto attack Q, auto attack E, auto attack W, and then R. Did you know that Sejuani's passive negates the slowing effects of the fruit? So if you're running away and worried about getting slowed down, you don't even have to worry about it. Did you know Senna's Q ward trick can be used to hit blast plants from far away? It can even be used to do damage to turrets, or more like tickle turrets. If you look really closely, Seraphine will show a blue spotlight under her allies when they're close enough for her notes. Now it's pretty common knowledge that you can suplex people over walls using the jumpy part of your ultimate, but did you know you can actually get over walls with the first part of your ultimate, like the part where you grab them? It's a pretty handy trick, or actually a very handy trick. You get it? Because he's grabbing you and throwing you. Okay, never mind. Did you know you can dodge damage with your ultimate on Shaco if you time it correctly, even turret shots? Something useful to know for both teams is Shen will always arrive in between the target he ulted and the closest enemy. So if you're on the other team, aim CC there before he can taunt you. Shyvana has the highest win rate with the Soraka support and the worst win rate with the Lulu support on her team. When playing Singed, a lot of people think you need to flip someone to stop their teleport, but you can actually just chuck your goo on them. If you look really carefully at Sion's axe when he's in his Q, you can actually see that it glows when the knockup is ready. You may be thinking that it does so on the ground too, so what's the point? But the axe light actually turns on a few frames quicker than the red lines. So next time you play Sion, maybe try looking at his axe for a better timing reference. Xavier's W will still bounce between enemies in a bush even if you don't have vision, and it can even tell you exactly how many people are in there. Just pay attention to the number of bounces. This is so situational, but you can actually ult Nocturne out of his ultimate when he's mid-flight. The same goes with other ultimates too, like Set's. When it comes to Sona, the majority of people max W first, but she actually has the highest win rate when maxing Q. Always try and use your W after your Q on Soraka because of the rejuvenation. Rejuvenation makes you use 90% less health when healing someone. This could easily be the difference between winning and losing lane. Like Ahri's Q, Swain can flash or move his E to redirect its pathing on the way back to him. If they move, you can just move with them. Did you know if you steal an ultimate with a passive on Sylas, you also receive the passive for as long as you hold on to it? Examples of these ultimates include Blitzcrank, Jax, or Yi's ultimate for cooldown reduction. Did you know if you use Syndra's W on the red buff and throw it onto an enemy, it'll actually apply a red buff burn onto them? So if you find yourself on that side of the jungle, try throwing a red buff on them for some extra damage. You can substantially increase the range of Tahm Kench's Devour on enemies by hitting them with your Q first and then ulting. This is the normal ult range, pretty dang small, but this is the range you can get if you Q first. It's actually pretty crazy. Talia's W isn't the only thing that can fling opponents over walls, so can your ultimate. As long as they're close enough to the wall, you can push them over by hitting the side of them with it. When playing Talon, you can actually cancel your E wall hop by using Prowler's Claw in your Q. It has to be super precise, but if you use Prowler's Claw, E, and then Q really fast, you can cancel your hop and then come back to your target. There's actually a little light that comes down when Tark's ultimate is used that will tell you how long you have until you're invulnerable. This is extremely useful when you're trying to perfectly time when to all in a team. As long as Teemo is in his passive and invisible, he can teleport without the other team seeing. This can be a great way to get out of a tricky situation. He can even arrive invisible after the teleport as long as it's in a bush. The next time you're playing Thresh, try throwing out your W immediately after using your hook. When you cast your lantern, Thresh moves to the direction that you cast it, so if you pair it with throwing a hook, it makes it really hard to predict where the actual Q is going to go. Did you know that's actually possible for Tristana to double jump mid-air? Similar to Kha'Zix, Tristana can also pull this off, but it's a little bit trickier. You have to get the reset to get another W jump, so you have to make sure an enemy dies when you're using your first W. This can be done with your E, alt, or even a well-timed auto, but it can be tricky. Next, right after you use your first W, you need to use another ability like Q, and then hit W again for your second jump. The timing on this is again super touchy, but if you manage to pull it off, you can create some insane plays. On Trundle, make sure to use your potions right after you use your W, because your W will also increase the healing those give as well. You can E flash onto people with Tryndamere as well as auto E for some damage while also getting away. This is one of Tryndamere's best trading tools, especially when they're under tower. Twisted Fate has the lowest win rate when playing against an Ahri, so it may be worth a dodge. Gaswell is a close second. Did you know you can actually dodge Twitch's auto attacks when he uses his ultimate? It's one of the only auto attacks in the game that you have a chance at dodging, so it may be worth trying to flash after all. This is a very niche situation, but if someone's trying to get away using the blast cone and you can't get to them, but you can get to the blast cone, then make sure to use your Phoenix stance because you can still be able to get some damage off. That little extra damage could be the difference between them getting away and them dying. Most people know you can E flash on Urgot, but did you know you can E flash in the opposite direction? This has a limited use to it, but say a jungler is coming up behind you and between you and your turret, you could then E flash them into your turret from the opposite side. You can cast your ultimate on Varus mid-air from a blast cone, which is great for escaping and engaging. One of the best tricks on Vayne is pulling off an E flash. You should never flash and then condemn, always cast your E first and then flash in the opposite direction you want them to go. This is extremely difficult to react to and almost a guaranteed stun if the enemy's near a wall. Vygar's Omega Squad skin makes it really difficult to see and hear his W. This is one of those times where it may be better not to have a cool flashy skin. There's a marker for Vel'Koz's Q which shows the max distance it can travel, which is both helpful for the Vel'Koz player as well as the person playing against Vel'Koz. Did you know on Vi you can hook people towards you by using some items like Gale Force? All you have to do is Q them and then immediately Gale Force right after in the opposite direction. You have to do it in the Q is right outside of the range though, or it won't work. If you ever need to steal Baron and not risk getting killed, you can try ulting outside of the Baron pit and then flashing in. That way you only briefly jump into the Baron pit and it will automatically pop you back out thanks to your ultimate. It's just enough time to smite without the risk of getting caught. Whenever you use Victor's Q, always spam click the target so you can get the empowered Q auto attack off as soon as possible. If you just click normally, it'll come off slow and be very difficult to land because they'll run away. But if you spam it, it's very difficult to escape from. You can get a surprising amount of damage off when you're inside your W on Vladimir, like being able to use your E for example. If you hold your E and then hit your W, you can pull and still cast your E. Additionally, once the E is cast, you can even protobell in your W. Between the two of them, it's actually a pretty substantial amount of damage for being untargetable. And if you really want to get fancy, you can even ult before going into your E and W so your ult damage goes off too. If you didn't know already, Volibear's Q can actually go over some small walls. And if he ults on top of that, he can even get over some slightly bigger ones too. Did you know that Warwick's ultimate range actually scales skills with movement speed. So if you're trying to get that extra range, try using movement speed buffs like Ghost W, Turbo Chem Tank, or whatever you have available. I mean, look at the difference between a normal ultimate compared to one with movement speed buffs. It's kind of insane. Did you know as of patch 12.7, Wukong can now hop over walls, which is huge for Wukong in itself, but it also creates some great insane outplay opportunities. It'll almost be impossible to catch Wukong once he gets to a wall now, because he can either hop over it, stand still, or do nothing and wait for you to hop over it and then just W backwards instead. It's gonna be crazy. Instead of flashing and then E'ing to land your feathers, try E'ing first and then flashing to make it almost impossible to react to. The same trick can also be used with Gale Force, which can also do some extra damage. Blue trinkets are Xerath's best friend when it comes to ulting. In fact, you can even use blue trinkets when you're mid ult to get vision back if they run away. Did you know you can actually do an insect with Xin Zhao's ultimate, and it's actually really easy? You just have to ult flash and you're good to go. If you're struggling to get over the chicken wall as Yasuo, all you have to do is click the small one here. And if you're struggling to get out of the chicken camp, you may consider using the attack champion only option, which also allows you to click anywhere in the camp without aggroing them, making it really easy to hop over. If you look carefully, you can see that Yone's E mark actually changes when they get low enough to execute with his E. I've never noticed this before, but it can be extremely helpful if you're trying to get out as soon as possible. Thork's cage isn't just good for trapping enemies in, but it can also be used as a disruption. If you use the side of your cage to hit a champion, it will knock them airborne for a split second. This is especially important when facing champions like Shen, because you can use your cage to cancel their ultimate. Here's kind of a fun one. When Yumi's passive is ready, her antenna actually glows, and when it's down, it turns off. You can of course just look at the passive timer, but if the Yumi's on the other team, this actually becomes really handy. When playing Zac, you're actually able to use Zhonya's right after you use his E, which means you can shoot yourself into team fights and be invulnerable at the same time. When playing Zed, you can throw your shadow on some walls, which can actually catch your opponents off guard, since, you know, walls don't usually attack people. It's a little tricky to get right, but once you do, it's kind of fun. Zuri can still cast her W even when she's E'ing over walls. This is actually perfect for her because it pretty much guarantees an extended W since you're already on a wall, and that's all you need to extend the range of it. For the most part, as long as you throw Ziggs's W over at least half of the wall, it'll reach the other side, which means you can actually destroy some turrets from a pretty safe distance like this one in bot lane. When playing Zilean, never worry about landing your Q on an enemy instead of yourself if you're nearby, mainly because your Q will always prioritize the enemy even if you cast it on top of yourself, as long as you're close enough to the target. A lot of people don't realize how much vision Zoe's ultimate can give. You don't even need to go over the pit to see what's happening, you just need to cast it next to it and it'll give you vision of dragon or whatever you need to see. And lastly, when playing Xayah, while it's not the best idea, you can drop two plants on top of one another and it'll look like one plant but do extra damage. Again, not always the best idea since they can just kind of walk over it and kill two plants at the same time, but sometimes it can be nice to get off some surprising extra damage. I'm looking at making a video of useful tips sent in by all of you in the future, so send them to outsidejokelol@gmail.com and I may just throw them in the vid. Please try and not use the league recorder though, because that thing records in 480p. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing. A huge shout out to my tier 3 patrons Joshua, Stefan, Senzo, Noctak, and James, and a huge shout out to my other patrons as well. I seriously can't thank you guys enough. Alright, bye.